Hello. In this video, I'll talk about how we plan to utilize the latest advances in virtual reality technology and neural stimulation research to address phantom limb pain. Our team is comprised of researchers and engineers from the Rehab Neural Engineering Lab, a part of the Department of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation, University of Pittsburgh. Up to 85% of amputees experience pain in their missing limb, which can be very intense, often described as stabbing or burning. Despite decades of research, the underlying mechanisms remain unclear and treatment options limited. Often, the phantom limb is perceived to be in a contorted position, and no amount of attempted movement of the missing limb relieves this sensation, presumably due to the absence of visual confirmation of the attempted movement. So, how do you treat pain in a region that does not exist anymore? For this very purpose, Dr. Ramachandran developed mirror therapy. In this, a mirror reflects the movements of the intact limb to generate a visual illusion of movements of the missing limb as shown in the video here, while the subject tries to move his phantom limb simultaneously. The hypothesis is that matching visual feedback will help gain greater perceived control over the phantom limb and reduce phantom limb pain. The graph on the right shows that in some amputees, phantom limb pain does undergo a significant reduction in the weeks when this therapy is administered, labeled as training phase here. But it is dependent on the susceptibility of the subject to the illusion, and perceived contortions of the phantom limb hamper the onset of this illusion. Nevertheless, after the initial surprise, the effects wear off in most amputees. The rubber hand illusion is often used to explore questions about body schema and embodiment. When the rubber hand is stroked synchronously with a hidden actual hand, people experience a sense of embodiment of the rubber hand. But a study showed that this technique can reduce phantom limb pain. This graph here on the right shows that result where stroking during rubber hand illusion produces a greater decrease in phantom limb pain than mirror therapy. But again, the success of this technique is dependent on how well the illusion is generated. The more invasive technique of peripheral nerve stimulation has also shown promise in alleviating phantom limb pain. It targets the ectopic activity of neuromas and dorsal root ganglia. In fact, dorsal root ganglia stimulation has been shown to be effective in reducing phantom limb pain. In our own study, electrical stimulation of dorsal spinal cord rootlets by itself generated a clinically significant reduction in phantom limb pain in 2 amputees. During the weeks of electrical stimulation, as shown in the graph here, the subjects reported lower intensity of phantom limb pain. We propose integrating all these different pieces in a more wholesome approach to address phantom limb pain. In a 2-pronged approach, we will 1. Employ immersive virtual reality environments to improve upon the effectiveness of mirror therapy and rubber hand illusion, and 2. Integrate tactile sensory feedback to these environments. The underlying hypothesis is that immersive environment and sensory feedback could provide immediate and prolonged relief from phantom limb pain. For this project, our first aim would be to fully develop these virtual reality environments for both mirror box and the rubber hand illusion setups, test their effectiveness, and collect pilot data with up to 20 able-bodied subjects. This will serve as proof of principle for further development of future experiments with amputees. For the rubber hand illusion, we have developed a virtual reality environment wherein the subject will be able to see the digital projection of their missing limb. Additionally, they'll be able to use a haptic robot with their intact limb to control a stylus in the VR environment, using which they can interact with the virtual limb and receive haptic feedback on the intact limb upon contact. Synchronous sensory stimulation can be provided manually as in the traditional setup for able-bodied subjects, as seen here. A researcher is brushing the real hand synchronous to the movements made by the subject. We have developed a virtual mirror box task, wherein a subject can perform grasping tasks with the virtual hands. A data glove worn on the intact limb will provide intuitive control of the hands in the virtual environment. Digital projection of the missing limb will mirror these movements, and this system will allow us to retrieve forces generated upon object contact, and these can be used to trigger sensory feedback. Thus, as our second aim, we aim to integrate tactile sensory feedback with these virtual reality environments and test them with 3 amputees. Epidural spinal cord stimulation will provide the sensory feedback. Forces from the mirror box and contact detection events from the rubber hand illusion will be used to scale and trigger stimulation. For the sensory feedback aspect of our approach, we will use epidural stimulation of dorsal spinal cord rootlets. In ongoing experiments in the lab, we have carried out epidural stimulation using FDA-approved leads in IRB-approved 29-day testing sessions. We could generate sensory percepts in the missing limb in 2 amputees. A right arm amputee reported the location of the sensations she perceived to be in her right arm. These experiments are funded by DARPA under the haptics program, which is completely focused on prosthetics development, but not on phantom limb pain specifically. The innovative aspects of this proposal include sensory percepts can be localized to the missing limb, sensory feedback by itself can alleviate phantom limb pain, immersive environments are coupled with temporally and spatially synchronous feedback. Treating phantom limb pain could potentially increase use of prosthetic devices and hence have a dramatic impact on the quality of life. This approach can serve both upper and lower limb amputees. It will be a concerted effort to determine the effect of sensory feedback in addressing phantom limb pain. This pilot project could also pave the way for developing novel therapeutic interventions, specifically to build towards the development of a gamified take-home system that subjects will be motivated to use and continue to receive sensory feedback. A number of wireless gesture controllers are commercially available and also have already been used to determine motor commands in amputees. These can be an excellent add-on for a take-home system. The sensory feedback will require further development to enable a take-home system. A gamified approach will enable the subjects to be motivated in performing the tasks in virtual reality environments. This video shows some of the latest developments in VR technology, where one can interact with the objects using digital projections of their own hands, which also mimic their movements. As mentioned earlier, the haptics program funds the recruitment and surgical implantation of the amputees and psychophysical testing of the sensory percepts. The CTSI pilot grant will fund the recruitment of able-bodied subjects. And here's our team again: Santosh, that's me, David Weir, Lauren Wilcox, and Lee Fisher, who will be the faculty advisor. Thank you.